Coming up, launch.
Launch and lettuce.
And we've got Dave Masten, boom, in studio to talk about what Masten Space Systems is up to. Stay tuned. Tomorrow begins right now. And welcome to Tomorrow, episode 8.24 for Saturday, August 22nd, 2015. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, the beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented Ariane Higginbotham.
You hit my head.
I accidentally hit her head. Awesome. We'll be your hosts for this episode. But before we get started, a huge shout out to all of the patrons of Tomorrow who have helped to make this specific episode of this episode happen.
This particular segment of this episode? Or this episode of this episode? We're having an episode, aren't we?
We're having an episode.
Yeah,
These are people who've contributed at least $10 or more to this specific segment of this episode. We are a crowdfunded show. Every single dollar helps. So if you'd like to help us stay on the air and do what we do, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. All right, let's go ahead and get started with some space news. First up, we have some launchy from Japan in H-2B launch coverage.
3, 2, 1. The engines igniting, the solid rocket boosters, and liftoff. The White Stork is in the air, HTV-5 heading towards the International Space Station.
And that was on August 19th at 11:50 and 49 seconds Coordinated Universal Time. This is sending cargo to the International Space Station via the HTV vehicle. It's going to actually be sending over 8,000 pounds of cargo. That's broken into about a little over 3,100 pounds of crew supplies like food and clothing. Then we've got about just under 2,800 pounds of gear that's going to support research on the International Space Station. And some of the specific components are going to be like spare parts for the water filtration system. That's probably a good thing to have. Some spacesuit components for extravehicular activities. And they've also got some experimental hardware that's going to include a high-temperature furnace, which seems like a bad idea, and a platform made by NanoRack, so it's going to allow you to host commercial payloads on an exposed facility on the outside of the International Space Station. This is the last supply run expected to fly to the United States segment of the space station until at least December, at which point the Cygnus freighter, if you may remember from Orbital Sciences back in the day, they lost their Antares rocket. This will be the return of Antares in early December, and the Cygnus spacecraft, where they will launch to the International Space Station using new engines on their rockets. So this is the This is kind of one of those high priority launches of getting cargo to the International Space Station. They want to make sure that they get that stuff up there and everything's good to go. So we're all happy. It looked great, and it just jumps right off the pad because of the salt.
Beautiful
it just
launch.
Boom right off the pad. You know, the liquid only vehicles just kind of lumber off the pad. That was just like, I'm out. Here we go. There you go. All right, moving along, we had another launch.
Yeah, another launch. European launch provider Ariane Space sent 2 communication satellites on an Ariane V rocket, and we should have footage of that.
Top. Allumage Vulcain.
Jeez.
Allumage ERP, décollage.
Thing is not kidding around. It's like, I am going to space now. Boosh!
It's so neat. So this particular, like I said, Ariane 5 carried 2 communication satellites, one from Eutelsat, one from Intelsat for Latin America, Africa, and the Middle East. This is the 4th Ariane 5 launch of this year. The larger of the 2 Eutelsat 8 West B high definition was providing high definition, ultra high definition. I didn't realize there was something beyond high definition. Ultra high definition apparently
that's
is the
4K.
thing.
4K.
Gotcha. Okay.
It even says ultra high definition on that camera right there.
Yeah, I don't read it from there. Anyway, ultra high definition TV broadcast services to North America and the Middle East, also to provide telecommunication services to Africa and Eastern South America. And then Intelsat 34 was given access to channels like Fox and HBO to Latin America, while providing broadband access to ships traveling in the North
Are you just reading that? You're just reading
I
that.
am, because I did not memorize it, because we have 37 people in our apartment right now that I was trying to coordinate
We
with.
totally do. We totally do. We have a live
there.
studio audience sitting behind us.
Say hello, everyone. Hello. There you go.
You got Lisa on the couch.
Yeah.
You got Dutta. We got Kat. Kat
There
sitting
you
in
go.
there
There's
somewhere.
Kat.
We've got. Could you pause the playback for me, Dutta?
Why?
It's like,
It's just, you
it's
don't
like
like
they're
the
still
French
talking
guy
about a
talking
rocket
in your
launch,
ear?
and we're showing. We got Dave Masten back there, sitting back there.
There you
We've
go.
got Tiff.
The other half of Tave.
The other half of Tave, and then we got Cole somewhere. Wave Cole.
There
right
you
sitting
go.
way back there. So
Awesome.
live studio audience.
Awesome.
They're going to be providing color commentary to this particular
They
show.
are our live chat room today, because
Yeah, all right.
there's that.
So, other cool things that happened, the RS-25 engine, also known, more commonly known as the Space Shuttle main engine, did a long duration test firing of just under 9 minutes. Check this out.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak over this, so just go ahead and, bring that audio way down, because it's...
Are we going to show all 9 minutes?
We're going to show, you know what, we're going to go ahead and show all 9 minutes with no commentary, just rocket engine noise.
It's so pretty, though. Look at that.
Boom, there it goes.
Oh, my God.
One of the most awesome rocket engines ever built. Don't listen to that part, Dave.
Ouch.
Fired Thursday, August 12th at 21:01 Coordinated Universal Time. That is 512,000 pounds of thrust you're looking at sea level. That is, for the Space Shuttle main engine, that would be known as throttling it up to 109%.
Dang.
Fired for 535 seconds, or nearly 9 minutes. And that exhaust that you're looking at coming out of the nozzle, that is 13 times the speed of sound at sea level. Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that cool? And the other neat thing is, so it's liquid. Actually, Dave, you might have to shout this to me. They regeneratively cool the engine. So they put either the fuel or the oxidizer through the engine. Which is it? Is it the fuel or the oxidizer? So they send the liquid hydrogen is pushed. You can see the engine bell freezing in that last shot.
Awesome.
Even though there's rocket fire right next to it. How cool is that? So there you go.
Wow, no pun intended.
The reason we're test firing this is we're going to be using the RS-25 engines on the Space Launch System, and they need they're kind of changing like how all of that plumbing works and how like the weight of the fuel sitting on top of it and a few characteristics, and obviously they're throttling it up to 109% instead of 104%. So they need to do some additional testing on the engine to make sure that all of that will work. I think they're doing some new avionics stuff with it as well that they may or may not be testing. So that's why we're doing these engine tests for the Space Launch System that will be launching in the... All right.
In the future.
In the future. It'll be launching in the tomorrow time frame.
Tomorrow.
In the tomorrow. And speaking of the space shuttle, the old school space shuttle, the water tanks from Space Shuttle Endeavour sitting right here in California, they've been pulled out. There you go. There's a shot of what the tanks actually look like. We've successfully removed 4 water tanks and 1 waste tank. They were located under the mid-deck, which is this is important. It's a non-visible area of the orbiter, which means that when it goes on exhibit, you're not going to notice that these tanks are missing. The reason they're doing this is there's a possible new use for these on the International Space Station for a new water storage system. It's kind of a proposal that they're coming up with. They still have to design like how they're going to get it up there and how they're going to deploy it yet. None of that's actually been done yet. And the reason they want these specific tanks is that they're only at about like 70% of their rated life. I'm sorry, they have 70% of their rated life still left in them, which depends on how you look at the numbers. So that's one of those interesting shuttle numbers that people like to use of like, oh, well, we only flew the shuttle 25 times of what it was designed to fly 100 times. Okay, so then you go, okay, well, then you've got 75% of your life left, except that they were designed to fly 100 times in like 5 years, not over the course of 30 or 40 years. So, yeah, there's that. Having said that, the reason they want to pull these tanks is they have a ton of sensors. They're known to be good. It'd be very expensive and costly to build new versions of these tanks. So just pull the old tanks out of the orbiter. They make that noise. Do your new water system, and then send it up to the International Space Station. So it should be, in theory, on paper, cheaper, faster, better, and more efficient. So there you go. All right. And finally, we're going to sling it over. We have live from Australia. She's currently in Australia, so everything will be upside down. Actually, she's visiting the U.S. right here, like 10 feet behind me. Lisa, SpacePod correspondent Lisa, Mini Stoge. We have got lettuce on the International Space Station. Tell us about that.
Thanks, Ben. So on August 10th, 2015, the International Space Station...
What year? What year is that?
2015.
Oh!
Nice.
The International Space Station crew ate their first crop of homegrown red lettuce, and they grew this using the veggie system on board, which was delivered through SpaceX's CRS-3 resupply mission. Now, the reason is that is cool is because we've never eaten any of the plants that we've grown before in space. We have grown one other crop of red lettuce, but we didn't eat it. The astronauts actually sent that back down to Earth to be assessed for any microbiological toxicity or anything growing bacteria or fungi on there that could be harmful to the astronauts. So that first crop was deemed okay, so that the second crop was ready to be eaten by our astronauts. This is really important because to be able to go and colonize the moon or Mars or beyond, we need to learn how to grow plants and food crops in space, and we've proven that now, so that's fantastic.
Awesome. So, and we can do more foods in the future, that's the plan? Like, they're not just doing lettuce, like the next step is a carrot?
The next step is actually to grow other plants such as tomatoes and blueberries, plants that have high amounts of antioxidants in them, because I think maybe this will help kind of protect the astronauts from the large amount of space radiation that they're exposed to.
When are they going to grow meat?
I don't know. Meat is pretty hard to grow in space.
Right.
You can grow the cells though. You can grow meat muscle cells and maybe eat them.
So you're currently not eating meat because you're planning to go to Mars.
That's
and
correct.
That's why, right?
Yeah, well, the first astronauts to the moon and Mars probably won't have any meat on their menu. Maybe insects, but most likely everything is going to be vegetable-based. So I'm trying not to eat meat to help prepare for that when I eventually go to Mars.
Does that mean you're eating insects?
Not at the moment, because they
Not
don't
at
seem
the
to
moment.
be
That
in
means
anyone's
yes.
menu. I will
That
eat
means
them
yes
if
in
I
the
had
future.
To. I would eat insects, yep.
Oh, they're
Gross.
not bad. They're not bad.
What, you've had insects?
Yeah.
All right, so that's something to
They're
keep...
crunchy.
That's something to keep in mind, kids, is that if you want to live on Mars, if you want to go to Mars, you're probably going to have to be a vegetarian, at least to start, / you're probably going to have to eat insects, because that's what we're going to be able to bring.
Protein.
That's what we're going to be able to bring. We can't bring a ton of stuff with us to Mars or anything else.
Yeah.
Lisa, welcome to the United States. I hope you've been having fun, and I know that you're going to space camp sometime soon, so hopefully we will get a space pod out of you with how awesome space camp is.
Yeah, I can't wait.
All right, cool. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I've got Dave Masten of Masten Space Systems. We're going to nerd out over spacey stuff. It's going to be awesome. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filmed on some expectation. This girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking. She's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Her heat keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking. She's fire walking to be free.
And welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, before we get to talking with Dave Masten of Masten Space Systems, I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of the patrons of Tomorrow who have helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. I got it right this time. These are the people who've contributed at least $5 or more to this specific episode. If you'd like to find out how you can help crowdfund the shows of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. All right, Dave, we've had you on the show about 4.7 million times. It's always interesting to have
that many already?
That many already, yes. That's how many shows we've had. It's amazing. It's always interesting to have you on the show, but for people who have not, who don't watch this show regularly, which is most people, or who don't know who you are, tell me, who is Masten Space Systems? What are you guys trying to do?
So Masten Space Systems is a smallish, I mean, we're about 20, 30 people, startup. Well, actually, I guess we shouldn't call ourselves a startup anymore. We've been around for 10 years.
How do you define a startup, though? I mean,
I don't know.
Right?
I don't
'Cause
know.
it
We can have a long discussion on it. But back to Masten Space Systems, small company. Working on reusable launch technologies. We have the reusable part figured out. We have the operability part figured out. And we're currently in the process of scaling up to an orbital vehicle. And we're getting a little extra help from the government through DARPA and NASA to make that part happen.
So what do you mean by reusable launch technologies? What do you have in that?
So in
bucket?
terms of reusable launch technologies, we're currently flying a number of vehicles. Actually, we just retired Zombie. I think it's officially retired now. We're not going to fly it again. We said that once before. It has over 300 flights, over 300 launches. Now, it doesn't go very high, it doesn't go very far, it doesn't go very fast, but it is a rocket vehicle, and it has done 300 flights, over 300 flights now.
And what was Zombie's purpose?
Zombie's whole purpose was for us to learn how to build a reusable rocket and do a basic takeoff, hover, and land again.
And who cares, right? So why do we need a reusable rocket? Why do you need to take off, hover, and land again?
Well, first of all, we need the reusable to make it inexpensive. It's launches are extremely expensive. Elon Musk is advertising, $60-something million for a launch of a Falcon. We need to bring that cost way down to make it affordable and make it possible for someone like me to buy a ticket to go to low Earth orbit or the moon or what have you. So that's sort of what we're trying to do is, we want to get that price down. Elon Musk says, he's going to get that price down, and Jeff Bezos and a whole bunch of other people have also said that, hey, it's all about getting the price down. Reusable is how we get that price down, because if you don't throw away the multi-million-dollar pieces of hardware every time you fly, that doesn't become a cost anymore. That's a capital investment as opposed to a cost. That brings the whole cost down. Now, what we're working on is, in order to make it reusable, you have to land after you've taken off instead of just dropping in the ocean. And so we've been working on landings, and we've figured out the landings, and we've been doing landings for, late 2015, so we're 5.5, 6 years worth of having figured out landings. And we land vertically. We land on, basically restart the engine as you're coming in, right before you touch down, restart the engine, slow yourself down, and then land gently on the ground.
Talk to me about landings a little bit, because landing on Earth, I'm going to say that's easy, right? Because you've got GPS constellations up there. You can tell it exactly where you want it to go. You can move it around for the most part.
Well, first easy in quotes.
I did quote it.
So the first thing I remember, one of the first things I learned in ground aviation back when I was studying how to be a pilot was that the most difficult acrobatic maneuver a pilot will ever do is called a landing. That is the most difficult maneuver a pilot will ever do with an aircraft. And it turns out that it's even more difficult when it's a rocket trying to land on just a plume of fire.
I guess my point is you've got, yes, true, right?
So we had to figure that out and make that happen.
Right, so you make that happen, but here on Earth you've got telemetry, you've got things that will guide you down, you've got data that helps you figure out where you're going. But let's say you want to go to the moon, you want to go to Mars, you want to go somewhere other than Earth.
So now we've taken this extremely difficult task, which is made, well, I won't say easier, but it's an extremely difficult task, and now we're going to make it twice as difficult, or 3 times as difficult, because we're landing on the moon or we're on Mars, and we have communication lags and everything else. So that's where we've been doing a lot of work with NASA, and mostly under a program called Catalyst, where it's basically an exchange of information and technology and know-how to develop better, more sophisticated methods of figuring out where you are as you're coming in, determining if you are in the right place, if it's actually going to be the right place in terms of you don't know what the ground actually looks like. I mean, for all the photographs we have of the moon, we've only identified boulders that are about as large or larger than this table. But a rocket wants boulders much smaller to land safely, or none at all, preferably. So then we need some way of identifying what are the hazards. So the first part of that is where are you, and we use something called terrain relative navigation, and that's basically take pictures, radar, laser radar, whatever, figure out what's on the ground and match that up with the information you already know about the place. So we already have those pictures from LRO of the moon. We can identify, you know, oh, that crater and that mountain and that valley line up with the image that I already have loaded. Here's how it lines up. Now I know where I'm oriented, where I am on the moon, and where that relationship is to where I'm supposed to be. So now I can make that correction, and then the next thing is I'm scanning and everything. I'm much closer than the satellites that took those pictures now. So I can see much finer detail. I can see the much smaller rocks. And I can say, okay, you know, we didn't pick out that this is a huge boulder field of 1 meter boulders because LRO images can only pick up 1.5 meter boulders. So, you know, instead of the nice smooth surface, it's actually 1 meter round boulders all over the place. I'm not going to be able to land here. But, you know, a few hundred meters away, there's a safe landing spot.
Yeah, this is a real thing that's actually happened before, right? This happened on Apollo 11, essentially,
So,
with the difference
yeah.
being they had a human to adjust the...
Well, you know, your terrain relative navigation, your hazard avoidance was called Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin.
But they had to move the
But yeah, they had to figure out, okay, we can't land where we're supposed to land. Let's, you know, basically expend all the rest of the fuel, ignore a couple of warnings, and go ahead and land, and hopefully this is going to work out. And fortunately, it worked out.
And you've built Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin basically into your vehicle autonomously. You've got an autonomous Neil Armstrong.
We are trying to go through that decision process and make it an algorithm we can run on a computer. And run fast enough on a computer. That's the other hard part. You know, computers just aren't as good as brains in some respects. And so that decision tree is a little more difficult to make.
So you've got Zombie.
We're working that out.
You've got Zombie. You're figuring out the autonomous landing. You've got that kind of you're putting that test bed to bed.
So so Zombie has become a massive test bed, and our follow-on vehicles to Zombie, we're currently flying one of those right now, Zero, are also, I mean, they're test beds, and they're really, you know, we're working out all that technology, working out all that stuff, and to the point where, you know, we're landing on a regular basis, and we've even done a number of flights where, I mean, we actually got paid by NASA to go and, you know, hey, this terrain relative navigation actually does work, and let's demonstrate it. And then we had a chance to actually test out a similar technology developed completely independently by Astrobotic at one point. It was doing terrain relative navigation and hazard avoidance, and so...
They're one of the Google Lunar X Prize
And
teams,
so
they're trying to go to the moon and land there and run a little rover around and then get a boatload of money from Google for doing
Exactly.
that. I think that's a really good way of sunning up the Google Lunar X Prize team. So what's the core difference between Zero and Zombie?
So the core difference between Zero and Zombie is Zero is intended to fly a bit faster. It was originally designed to go supersonic. It won't actually be able to go supersonic. There's some issues with it. But we're still learning a lot about the aerodynamics and being able to go much faster with it.
But these are not orbital vehicles.
These are definitely not orbital vehicles. They're these are suborbital vehicles, maybe we could call them. And we're working on some suborbital vehicles as well. They're low performance. We're figuring out the technologies. It's, you know, all the hard parts down next to the ground. And so we're figuring all that out, and we have that, you know, worked out, and now we're scaling up to the...
What do you mean by all the hard parts are down next to the ground? Like
that goes back to the landing, right? Yeah. The landing's the hard part. You know, we have ground effect issues. You know, you can run all the aerodynamics you want, and, you know, pretty much a Falcon or an Atlas V, you run their shapes in a computer fluid simulation, you're going to get the right answer. When you start testing things with rocket engines near the ground, you get a lot of surprises that the CFD codes may not actually pick up. There have been surprises on every vertical landing on a jet.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, so We had, I mean, basically your Harriers and is it Harrier? Yeah, I think it's Harrier. The Marine jump jet where turn the jets down. And guess what? The pilots found out, had a few nasty surprises when they first figured out how to land those vertically. DCX, the Boeing, or actually McDonnell Douglas at that time,
little space plane jumping thing. Yeah.
Space plane jumping
Triangle
thing. Their first flight, they actually had control reversal problems. They almost did not land.
Control reversal problems, as
when
they
said
flipped,
like,
right went left and left went right kind of thing.
When they were like, okay, if we cant our engines this direction, our vehicle should turn this way and move in this direction, and it went everything opposite that. Is what ended up happening. So yeah, they discovered a huge problem. Fortunately, they were coming down, and basically it just meant they landed a little bit off from where they were supposed to be. So it worked out okay, and they saw that in the data, and they're like, oh wow, and scratched their heads and had to figure it out. And basically every single program that's tried to land vertically has had that problem. We have that problem on all of our vehicles now. Well, not that exact problem. We've seen that there are definite effects from ground effects, and they seem to always be different. Zero, I don't know how many test flights we did, just finding out that no matter what we're going to do, we're going to be within a certain distance of the ground, and it's just going to vibrate the heck out of the vehicle. And we couldn't get it to reproduce any simulations, but we could reproduce it on actual flight days. So we've worked that out, and we expect that any other vehicle we build, we're going to have that problem.
So these are test beds.
So these are all test beds, yeah.
But you're going to want to eventually scale that up to something much larger so you can send stuff places.
We are scaling that up much larger. We have a contract with DARPA, along with two much larger companies. DARPA XS-1, the program, the idea of DARPA's XS-1 program is to develop a vehicle that can take 3,000 to 5,000 pounds to orbit, fly 10 times in 10 days, and have a cost per launch of less than $5 million.
That's kind of insane, right? When you actually think about what they're asking you to do, nothing like that has ever been done in the history of rocketry. That is not a normal thing.
This is why it's a DARPA program. It's called DARPA Hard. It means that there is a very good chance that it won't work, but that the payoff, if it does work, is very high.
Do you think it will work?
Yeah, I think it'll work.
Dumb question.
Well, we've already figured out the operations. We've figured out the scaling on that. We're currently doing quite a bit of work with under DARPA, under this DARPA contract, saying, the operations scale great. We have no problem there. So some of the other work, we're doing is actually getting the scaling, and there's some issues with actual flight profiles and geometries and stuff. But it's sort of we're the oddball in the group of companies. So the companies who have the contract are Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and ourselves, Masten. We're the company that went in and said, oh, well, yeah, the cost and the operations and the 10 times in 10 days, that's no problem. That's the easy part.
That's
but
that's not what anyone else would say, Dave.
Now going to orbit, that's the hard part for us. But Boeing and Northrop Grumman and DARPA are all stuck on what about the 10 times in 10 days and getting the cost down below $5 million? And we're like, that's the easy part.
But does it scale, right? I mean, these are smaller vehicles you're working on right now. Does it scale up to these size vehicles without huge changes in data?
That's part of what we've been working on is, does it scale? And yeah, it does. It does scale. It scales. It's not even a linear. It's better than linear scaling. It's basically so far it looks like we can keep the exact same crew size as we currently use, which is a handful.
So let's say this works, right? Let's say the DARPA challenge is this hard DARPA challenge, the payoff is big. What is that payoff? Let's say you can do this 10 times in 10 days. You can do it for under $5 million a flight. What does that actually mean in the long term for space viability?
So, the big things for us is that, that means that it doesn't cost $60 million to launch your little satellite or your big satellite. So maybe it doesn't have to be a big satellite. Maybe it can be a small satellite.
Bigger than a nano or pico or mini. I mean, we've got CubeSats, which are tiny. We got tons of launches that are going under $1 million that are trying to do that now. But you mean like a reasonable communication satellite?
So well, when you look at, you look at the typical communication satellite nowadays, they're currently the size of a bus.
Sure.
And we're looking at, okay, well, you know, actually, the big words right now in the satellite industry are disaggregation. Like, so instead of building this one big, huge, multi-billion-dollar satellite, let's make that smaller, launch them more frequently. You don't have to try to future-proof them as much. Now the satellite costs start coming down, and basically the whole cost of space comes way down. Both the satellite, the launch, and that means more people into space. Maybe we can actually get to the moon again. Maybe we can go to Mars. And it might not be a huge, massive government program with all the overruns and never actually making it problems.
When you look at technology, you get a new iPhone every year. You get a new TV every year. Right? These pretty, I won't call them huge sweeping gains year over year, but pretty good incremental gains each year. You look at aerospace, that same time measure is basically decades. By enabling low-cost launchers, do you then allow these satellite manufacturers to take some of the technology that we've developed for, say, an iPhone and just try it in space and see if it works instead of doing, we've got custom processors out there to deal with radiation. What if you don't?
That's what we're hoping is we hope that, you know, instead of, you know, spending, you know, if we cut the launch cost by a factor of 10, if the satellites can also then cut their, you know, cost of building a satellite by a factor of you know, something, 10, 5, whatever, that's that many more flights. So instead of having a 20-year lifespan for a satellite or a 30-year lifespan, they can start planning on maybe a 2 or 3 year lifespan. And then they can enable an ability to capture the better technology each time and keep up with it rather than, yeah, satellite's 30 years old, it kind of functions, but it's big, it's huge, it's ugly, it doesn't do real well, and we're not real competitive anymore.
So we've glossed over kind of the moon a little bit. You've mentioned it from time to time, and Mars, of course, as well. You're moon first. I love the shirt. It says moon first. Can you buy that anywhere online, by the way? Do you?
Yes, yeah, we can. But we're working on making it a little bit easier. Right now, you'd have to know where the image is stored and what store we were doing it through and all that. And I never remember.
Let me know when you've got a cool thing. We'll tweet it out to everyone.
Yeah.
Those are pretty cool shirts. So everything we've been talking up to this point for the vehicles you're doing, we've been talking cargo. And then kind of like an offshoot of, by the way, back to the moon. What is that, oh, by the way, back to the moon? What does that path forward look like? How do we go from where you're at right now to humans on the moon?
So we are actually working on, you know, we've got all these landers, we're doing lander technology, we're also building a launch vehicle. Well, we're, you know, once you can land someplace, and like I said, you know, we've already talked about some of the other difficulties landing other places, but, you know, we're landing vertically. We can land anywhere in the solar system that has a solid surface to land on, we can land on it. So we're building moon vehicles right now too. We see a potential need for that in the future. So we're working on that technology, and you know, we're building moon landers.
So I'm wondering, if I'm a Google Lunar X Prize team and I'm supposed to send this rover to the moon, what if I send a human with the rover with a little remote control? Do I no longer qualify because I'm, you know, this far away from my rover with a little RV car taking stuff back? Is that a viable thing I could do?
Well, I mean, I don't think the rules prevent you from being, you know, human is an ultimate rover, right?
Sure. Yeah. There you go.
You know, put the GoPro camera on your helmet and go. I'm sure you can walk 5 kilometers in a day, and that gets you, you know, your extra meets all of your requirements and everything.
So I know that you think about this stuff constantly. You know, how do we get humans to the moon? How do we get humans to Mars? How do we colonize and settle? But I don't believe you're in the go there and stay there one-way trip camp, right? You're in the go, and then if I want to come back, I can still come back.
Well, I want to go to Mars.
Sure.
Ultimately, I want to go to the moon. I also want to go to Mars. Specifically, I want to, you know, I want to be the guy who surveys Elon Musk's retirement home.
Does he know that, by the way? Has anyone ever mentioned that to him?
I don't know if anybody's ever mentioned that to him. I don't know. He probably wouldn't like that idea too much. But, you know, that's why we both started space companies. We're kind of competitive that way. I would love to survey his home, or, you know, the first 1 million people, survey some portion of it. Definitely do some exploration, but I want to come home and I want to retire to the Sierra Nevada. You know, it's just technically we actually live in the Sierra Nevada, right on the southern tip of it. I don't want to live in that particular. I don't want to retire in that particular town, but somewhere along there.
So yeah, you'll come back. So your vehicles will be capable of coming back, right?
So I intend on coming back all the time, and quite frankly, we need to have trade. You need to have that constant ability to trade back and forth, and because someone's going to figure something out on Mars that can only be done on Mars, or can be done cheapest on Mars, even with the shipping costs.
It's going to be expensive shipping, guys. Imagine that FedEx Red overnight delivery from Mars.
I don't know about overnight.
Overnight's going to be, it might be slightly late making it back, ever so slightly.
You know, hey, the U.S. Postal Service may have a good use for their 1 month delivery schedule. They might need an ion propulsion, but, you know, they could probably do it. Well, no, and you know, and the thing is, once you start having people on Mars and you start figuring out that, yes, it's going to be a round trip every time, people are going to start coming up with ways to cutting that travel time from 9 months down to 6 months to 3 months to 2 months, maybe just a handful of weeks.
So from there, where do we go? What's the... So we've cut our travel time down, but I guess what I'm actually trying to ask, if I formulate my question, is why do we care as humanity? Why do we want to go to Mars at all? I mean, you mentioned we'll find something there, but we don't know what we'll find. So what is the business?
For me, we don't know.
What's the business plan for Mars? There's a succinct way of asking my question.
There are multiple business plans. I'm not going to give away my particular business plan of how I'm going to go there, do the survey, and come back. And,
we'll sell it to Elon. Like,
but yeah, here's all the details. Here's the information. Yeah. Here, Elon, pay for it. I actually have more to that business plan than that. But I mean, who knows what the business plan is? Well, first of all, there's a whole bunch of people who just like to go.
Sure, but I mean, the business plan matters, right? You have you have non-space geeks going, but who cares? Why do I need to go? Who cares?
You know, the non-space geek probably doesn't care and probably shouldn't care. But one of the things that was really nice, there was a period where, as Europe started becoming more and more crowded, almost overcrowded, there was sort of a relief valve for the people who didn't quite fit into the European society. And it was called North America. Now, there were some people already in North America that didn't really appreciate that, but we don't have that problem on Mars. There are people who may not so much like our current society, like the direction the society is going in, and they want to break out, and so there's going to be a certain amount of they want to get out of here. For whatever reason, they don't think they fit in, can't make it here. They might have a better opportunity someplace else, and so let's give them that. And it's also, you know, a chance, you know. When, you know, in the 1600s and 1700s, there was this wonderful laboratory where you could try out all sorts of different types of governments. And you know, hey, there was one of them that actually worked out pretty well.
Well, I think the government on Mars, and this is for a different show, we could have an entire show about the government on Mars, because the government on Mars will need to be different than anything we've seen today, because you have to survive differently, because you have to survive. And surviving on a planet that desperately wants to kill you is very different than surviving on Earth.
Well, you know, it's that's just a matter of degree. I mean, the environment on Earth desperately wants to kill you, just not as desperately as Mars does.
All right, but at least I can walk outside and breathe. Right? I mean,
You can walk outside and breathe.
There's levels
yes.
of all right. There's levels of it wanting to kill you. Mars is way up here. I think once you leave Earth, then the level of the universe.
Have you been outside today? I don't know about going outside and breathing. We are in Los Angeles, or just south of Los Angeles, right?
That's fair.
And actually, I mean, Tiff and I were out. Tiff, my better half, fiance now.
Congratulations, by the way,
you.
that announcement not that long ago.
We were on vacation, going out in the wilderness to get nice fresh air, and we got smoked out. So
That sucks.
yeah, back to that. The Earth wants to kill you. Just not quite as desperately as Mars does.
That needs to be in a shirt as well. So where does Masten Space Systems go from here? You've got the DARPA stuff you're working on. What's next?
So we have the DARPA stuff. We also have the lunar landing capability. Really, right now, I'm just really focused on making sure those two things actually occur. And hopefully they can occur in a way that actually carries each other forward. We've already seen a lot of the technology sort of bleeding through between the two programs to each other. I was talking about that landing stuff for the moon, where we don't have the GPS satellites. Well, for the XS-1, we're going to be landing right back on a pad right next to our launch control center. So, we don't need all that technology, right? Well, actually, some of that terrain relative navigation and hazard avoidance is also an interesting safety mechanism when we have to do our aborts. Oh, is there a hazard there? Does that hazard look like an RV or a car or, whatever?
Yeah.
And let's avoid that. And that becomes a major safety thing, so that maybe we can actually do our launches over land instead of over the ocean.
It's an interesting little, because at least U.S. launches, everything is designed to go over an ocean somewhere, so you're flying over the least populated areas. Right. That really limits where you can launch from. Specifically, we launch most of our rockets from the lightning capital of the world. That seems like a bad idea. So that could enable some, like New Mexico launches, for example. That seems like a really great place to launch, but it's missing water.
Yeah. Of course, now everybody has their things. We have here in California, we have the earthquake, so we have to.
Sure. That
becomes a different requirement, but yeah. So there's lots of things that we can move back and forth in terms of technology across programs, and it's been really helpful. So I'm really just concentrating on getting those two programs done, and then after that, let's build larger moon landers.
Sooner, Dave. I want to go to the moon
we
now.
have talked on this show in the past about our Zeus program. That's still live, well, and kicking. It's just not going as fast as I'd like it to go. But that's a lunar lander, and that's 4 people on the moon. So yeah,
I'll go, just so you know. So people are excited about what you're doing. Maybe they want to work for you. Maybe they want to just see more about Masten Space Systems, where they go for that information.
Masten.aero, Masten.aero.
Awesome. Dave, thank you as always for coming on the show. Actually, you guys have a Twitter. You guys have, you're really active on social media.
So
all that fun jazz.
So if you want to know all about the High Sierra and all my adventures in the High Sierra, there is @dmasten. That's my Twitter handle. @Masten Space is the company Twitter handle. I'm trying to remember. Our crew chief and engineering director has a Twitter account. What is it? Rocket Flyer. @Rocket Flyer. So those are 3 right there that are very active.
Everyone watching live, they're logging into Twitter right now, making it go.
Yeah.
Dave, thank you as always for coming on the show. It was really fast notice. We heard you were in town, and we're like, yoink, come back on the show. Talk to me about cool space things. And you're like, all right, fine. So thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday to come over here and talk and geek out yet again. All right, we're going to
Thank you.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, comments from our last show. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
We've always looked to the stars. They guide us, give us comfort, help us find our way. We see ourselves out there. When we look up, it inspires us. And we long for something we don't yet know. We yearn to go there. So, we venture forth.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
The exploration of space will go ahead, whether we join in it or not.
Many think we stopped exploring. But we know our journey didn't end. We've only just begun.
Orion is functioning perfectly at this point.
Come with us and explore tomorrow.
And welcome back to Tomorrow. Awesome interview with Dave. That was a lot of fun.
Always.
Yeah, I man crush on Dave. It's great. So, and I didn't move my mug around the set. So if they were playing the at-home drinking game of how many times I touched my mug. Well, yeah, that's true. But I was drinking it. I was actually like using it to drink for real.
Okay, we'll go with that.
My mic?
It is now.
That was awesome. We're going to leave that in the show because that's what we do. I'd like to thank all the patrons of Tomorrow for helping to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are the Patreon Plus subscribers. These are people who have contributed $2.50 or more to this specific episode. And the neat thing about Patreon is you contribute whatever you think this show is worth. And no, negative numbers, not a real thing. So if you think it's worth $2.50 per episode, awesome. And you will only contribute when we actually air an episode, right? So if we're off for a week, it doesn't cost you anything. So we have to make content in order for you to contribute. But if you don't think it's worth $2.50, you can even contribute as little as a penny. Those are our patron subscribers. So as little as 1 penny per episode, which will be about on average 3 pennies per month, 3 US pennies per month, gets your name in the show and helps us continue to produce the episode. Hopefully you think it's worth more than a penny. Hopefully you get something out of this episode and you think it's worth a little bit more than that. But we do appreciate everything that you can do to help make the show better and better. For more information on how you can crowdfund the shows of tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. We thank every single one of our patrons. You guys are the lifeblood of the show and help make it happen. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Oh, by the way, chat room. I am back in the chat room. Let's go ahead and get started with comments from our last show, which I believe was 2 weeks ago. So first off is Hornhoof Records. Frequent commenter. Frequently has good comments.
Yes.
So here you go.
Horn and Hoof Record says, #Tomorrow. I wonder, can the Escape Dynamics SSTO, single stage to orbit, system be used for manned access to space, or will any occupants be cooked?
Actually,
Shielding?
That's a great question and was in fact answered in the After Dark episode for that particular show.
Yeah.
Episode. What is it with me and the word episode today?
I don't know, but you really like it.
I really like episode. I'm having an episode of episodes is what's going on.
Yay!
It was answered in After Dark, so if you're a Patreon Plus subscriber or better, you can head over to Patreon and you can actually watch that After Dark episode right now. If you're not a subscriber to Patreon, or if you're just a regular patron, it'll be available in about 2 or 3 more weeks or so, and you'll be able to watch that. The quick answer to your question is shielding from microwave is a very easy and common thing, and they're not worried about that part at all. I mean, we shield from microwave all the time. It's much easier to shield from microwave than it is to shield from, say, radiation. So very, very easy for them to do. They're not worried about that. They're going to have to shield their electronics from it anyhow, so it's just part of this existing system. Whoosh, moving along.
From Highwell1995 off of Reddit says, it's crazy to think that in a few years' time we'll have traditional propulsion and then we'll also have this new space propulsion. Maybe in a decade or two we'll have a hybrid of them both?
So what I liked about... whoosh, we went! What I liked about them was the fact that they're like, look, we're pretty sure this will work. We're not breaking any physics, but we don't know yet, and that's why we're trying it. So it is possible that it won't work, or that there's a stumbling block that they're not aware of, or it's the unknown unknowns, or the things you don't know that you don't know yet, that might be the gotchas. So I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful. I think these guys really have their act together. And it was one of the best, other than like having Dave here, one of the best interviews I think we've ever had. And I'm very hopeful that they succeed. But
I feel like we changed a lot of minds.
I think so too.
Not
I think
they changed a lot of minds.
That happened to me, right?
Sorry.
So in the discovery process, because we do discovery on everyone, I was super skeptical. I'm like, nope, this is not a thing. It took them like 5 minutes and convinced me. I'm like, oh, actually, this could be a real thing. And I think once you sit down and listen to what they have to say, it makes total sense. And you're like, okay, this may or may not work, but at least I believe that it has a chance of working.
Yeah.
I think that's where we're at right now, is it has a chance of working. I think actually a pretty solid chance. All right, moving on.
From TC1991, also off of Reddit. This was a fantastic guest. I was skeptical at first, but he really sold me on the idea and company. I think the best guest you've had in a while, not to disparage against our other guests, of course.
That is amazing that we just basically answered that question in advance. I psychically, either that or I'm the one who put the question in the show, one of the two. But yeah, totally, totally agree. Absolutely agree. So moving on.
This one comes from YouTube. This is from Glander Broder.
Glander, no icon, no
Bronderg?
Picture. No picture.
Glander Broder.
Glander Bronderg.
Yep. We're going to go with that. Anyway, from YouTube. What I love about this company is that it is taking a bold new approach to spaceflight and actually doing something. Most companies that get that kind of publicity that this company has been getting are usually just a bunch of computer animations and PowerPoint presentations. These guys are actually bending metal and have proven prototypes showing the ideas themselves are actually working.
Yes, and that's the key, is they're bending metal. Anyone can have an idea. Ideas are actually, well, they're hard too, but ideas are very easy to have, and it's very easy to talk about stuff. Ironically, on our talk show, I say that, but whatever. What's really hard is to actually take action and bend metal. It's really hard to be an Escape. It's really hard to be a Masten. It's really hard to be even a Lynx or a Virgin Galactic or a SpaceX. Bending metal and actually making things and making them fly and learning those lessons and finding the funding to do all of that, that's exceptionally difficult to do, and that's why I like them a lot, is because they are bending metal. They do have funding. They get that part. They have the business side of it figured out, as well as the intellectual and the theoretical stuff going on as well. And that's why I'm really excited about what they're. I am more excited about this than most. I love next generation propulsion, and I'm super excited for what they'll be able to do. It won't be huge payloads, though, right? I mean, but that's okay. There is absolutely a market for that, and it will enable a next generation or a new generation of space vehicles, or space satellites is the word I really want to use, to do cool, interesting things. Things that we can't even imagine today. All right, I'll get off that soapbox. Go ahead.
Somebody recently on Twitter said something along the lines of, just because there's a patent for like nanotubes at a certain length doesn't mean that it's actually possible. Yeah. But people, you get really excited about it, but yeah, it's different when you're actually bending metal. Okay, so this last comment comes from off of YouTube. This is from Kim Brondergaard. Brundergaard?
The umlaut.
Bundergaard?
All right, guests. How would you
Bundergaard?
pronounce that?
I know I'm hacking it to pieces, and I apologize. It's the umlaut that's really screwing me up, and way too many years in Minnesota.
Does anyone behind us know how to pronounce that?
Bundergaard?
No one knows. All right, great. So, Bundergaard. Yeah, Kim, if we're saying that wrong, we're very, very sorry. All right, what does Kim have to say?
Kim is used to us hacking away at names. Any contact info to get in touch with the devs at the Launch Library API. Working on an app using the databases, but the documentation for the API is lacking.
So first off, thank you to all of the Launch librarians who help keep that database up to date. It's really cool. You head over to launchlibrary.net. You've got a little web page. It tells you all the launches that are coming up, where they're launching from, when they're launching from. And there is now officially an Easter egg on that page, and it is a ton of fun.
Nice.
So yeah, search for that. Just click around the page. You'll find it. It's not that hard to find, but it's a lot of fun. For getting contact information on how to do that, there are a couple different things. First, you can post on the Reddit community. So reddit.com/r/launchlibrary. I do monitor that, and so post your question there. And the advantage of doing that is anything you have there, we can also then use that data to help other developers as well. So the public forum of Reddit is a great place to launch that, or to do that. However, if you prefer to do it privately, Benjamin@tmro.tv, and I will get you in touch with the developer directly so that you can work with them one-on-one as best you can and figure out how to make all of that go. Yeah, if you're working on an application, let us know. Once you got it kind of at a decent state, we'll talk about it on the show. I mean, we want to see cool applications using this data and get other people excited about space. That's why we have the Launch Library. That's its entire purpose in life. All right, that is our show for this week. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. It was totally fun. Dutta, go back to that other, go to Duttacam. Go to Duttacam. Go to Duttacam. And I'd also like to thank our in-studio audience. We have Dutta. We have Dave. Thank you, Dave. Thank you for being on set. We have Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. We have Kat somewhere on screen. There's Kat. You got to face the. There you go.
There you go.
There's
The
Kat.
other
we
one.
have Cole. We have Cole, and we have Tiff. Right,
Dave's
sitting right
better
back. Dave's better half, sitting right back there, coming all the way from Mojave. We call it Mojave because of the J. California, which is not near here. It's in the middle of. It's actually really close to. It is really close to something. It's called the middle of nowhere, is what it's really close to.
Edge of nowhere.
It's the edge of nowhere. Yeah, is that what that is, Dave?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you everyone so much for watching. After Dark's up next. We'll see you next week.